Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and tonight I'll be talking about Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise is the fifth movie in the long-running Evil Dead franchise, which started way back in 1981 with The Evil Dead, and technically even a little further back with the original short film by Sam Raimi called Within the Woods. It's a movie that spanned many different subgenres within horror and even branching out to fantasy with Army of Darkness. And it's always been something, for me at least, that's been kind of hard to categorize within my horror collection. You know, it's got elements of demon movies, supernatural movies, zombie movies, splatter movies, comedy movies, and, like I said, fantasy movies. But so it's always been something that, has kind of shuffled around, even in body horror to a degree. But right now, currently, it's sitting with the, quote, demon movies, stuff like Antichrist, The Exorcist, Prince of Darkness, Demons by Lamberto Bava would be the best example to bring it up with, and even maybe Night of the Demons. But yeah, so as for now, it's a demonic movie, but it's also something I've always been really interested in, because I remember growing up knowing about how, famous it was within the horror community, how essential it was with the 80s horror movies. And I remember even seeing scenes of it in Nightmare on Elm Street and Donnie Darko. Those of you may know, there's scenes, I think, from just the beginning in both those movies, which was, something to even pique my interest a little bit further, along with the many action figures made by movie maniacs and cult classics. Those just, further fueled interest in what this movie was. And then it got around the time of, actually finding a copy and watching it. And, I don't want to get too into it because Evil Dead is one of my favorite splatter type franchises, demon franchises, whatever you want to call it. And I really hope to cover, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe this one again in a marathon. But for now, I'll try to stick to the one movie. But yeah, that first one, it was awesome. It hooked me. And then I instantly saw part 2, saw Army of Darkness. And then I remember when the fourth one came out, I wasn't old enough to see it in theaters, so I just waited for a DVD to come out, got it, watched it, and watched a bit of the show here and there. But I did have some of the video games like Fistful of Boomstick and I believe Resurrection for the Xbox. So anything Evil Dead, I kind of just soaked up. And on that note, there's a few comic books that I hope to cover at some point, like Army of Darkness versus the Marvel Zombies, the Army of Darkness spin-offs. There's a lot of good stuff there. And I even believe there's a Dark Horse comic adaptation of the first Evil Dead, which is really cool too. One thing that I mentioned a couple times already is that Evil Dead doesn't really fit a specific, subgenre. Times it's downright horrific, and at times it's, a really dark comedy, almost akin to a Three Stooges sketch or a, Looney Tunes cartoon. But I always found that the first movie and the fourth movie were really good in the sense that of being horror movies. Don't get me wrong, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn is, fucking awesome. And, I don't really want to say much without giving it away, but I'm not a big fan of Army of Darkness. I'm not really big on the whole comedic aspect of Evil Dead, and that's kind of why I didn't really watch too much of the show. So, I was really interested when I saw the Red Band trailer for this movie when it just randomly dropped out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh, this looks really fucking serious. So I got hyped when it came out. I waited for it to come out on DVD because I don't do the streaming thing, and, I had it for a while, and I just decided to watch it tonight, and damn, that was a cool movie. I'm going to just say, I'm glad they went back to the serious route in this one. And, let's get into it. And for this review, I'm not going to, spoil too much. I'm going to kind of just graze over the plot. I don't want to spoil the kills in detail because it is really cool. And, Evil Dead fans, gore fans out there, you guys are going to appreciate it. So, yeah, Evil Dead Rise, directed by Lee Cronin, written by Lee Cronin, based on characters, of course, by Sam Raimi. Produced by Rob Tappert, starring Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Morgan Davies, Gabrielle Eccles, Nell Fisher. Cinematography by Dave Garbett. Edited by Brian Shaw. Music by Stephen McKinnon. Production companies New Line Cinemas, Renaissance Pictures, Pacific Renaissance, Wild Atlantic Pictures, and distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It's kind of funny. This goes a little full circle because the first Evil Dead was distributed by New Lines, and now this more current one is also distributed by them. That's a little cool fact I thought you guys would find interesting. And also, this movie was made from anywhere between 15 to 19 million dollars, and it made back about 147 million, which is a nice return. Like, good on them for that. But diving into the plot here, basically it starts off like how you'd expect any other Evil Dead movie to start off, excluding Army of Darkness, of course, at a cabin in the woods. And basically we are introduced to a bunch of like college douchebag kids, pretty much cannon fodder. And at first I thought they might be the main characters, but then I remembered the trailer and knew it was about a family, so I was like, no, these guys are gonna get fucking offed fast. And sure enough, Buddy's talking about how he gave his girlfriend a Klonopin, and she's like supposed to be chilling out because she's being like unbearable. And if you know Evil Dead, if someone's being fucked up or sick in the cabin, shit's gonna get bad. And he's fucking around with the drone. The girlfriend's sister goes inside, and some creepy shit starts happening involving a book, kind of calling back to the original Evil Dead with the Deadites fucking with the humans. And we get two brutal fucking kills, one with a drone, and I just said I wasn't going to spoil the kills, but they are gory. One thing that kind of didn't get to me is some of the practicals look a little, I don't want to say fake, because Evil Dead 1 didn't have technically the best practicals, but it looked real, but it looked CG at the same time. Like, it didn't really look quite real, but that kind of came up a couple times with the gore. But other than that, it wasn't a huge thing. It's just in moments where it was like a head getting chopped off, it wasn't the greatest. But yeah, everyone gets fucked up like you'd expect at the cabin. And then, the really cool title crawl everyone was talking about, where Evil Dead Rise comes up from behind the mountains as like the possessed chick is rising up from the fucking lake. Really cool shot and a really cool beginning to this movie. And I thought it was pretty cool, but at the same time, I didn't think it made much sense, because when this movie was announced and when it was advertised with the Red Band trailer, the whole gimmick was this is going to be in the city. It's not going to be in a cabin. So I kind of at first thought that even though it was pretty cool, I thought they just forced it in as like fan service or something, because it kind of felt out of place. But like with the New Line thing, it kind of comes full circle, so we'll get there. But yeah, so we cut to Los Angeles, and there's this dumpy emo guitar tech chick, and she's in she's in a situation. I think she gets like pregnant, she's knocked up or something, and she has to go home to her sister because she needs to get bailed out and help. This is a thing that comes up later, and it wasn't one of my favorite aspects of this movie, but I carry on. We are introduced to the sister, who becomes the main Deadite later, and holy shit. But yeah, so basically this dumpy emo Beth, she shows up, and we are introduced to Elle, the mom who becomes the Deadite basically, and her three offspring in this reverse nuclear family of sorts of like art alternative kids. We got Lil Slim Shady on the turntables. We got, the Chloe Grace Moretz clone, type girl, little blonde fucking girl who has a weird, like, head on a stick. It kind of reminded me of the fucking dagger from the original movies, like that like skull knife thing. But, yeah, and then the third girl who I, just kept, the whole time I just kept thinking it was Ellen Page. So I just kept referring to her as Ellen Page, and she was like really, lippy, talking about protest and shit. And, the whole family dynamic, it was just, they were all kind of awful. And I was thinking like, if this was going to go the serious route, like they were going to end it like the first Evil Dead. Because that's something up until this point that hadn't happened, like the first Evil Dead, spoiler alert, everyone fucking dies, including Ash. And I always liked that ending, like, don't get me wrong, I like Evil Dead 2. I'm not the biggest Army of Darkness fan, and Evil Dead 4 is pretty cool as well, but they always end with someone surviving. In Evil Dead 4, when I review that one day, I'll get more into why it's annoying with that movie, but I never felt like it ended on a scare, like a serious lingering scare, in the sense that, like, there's no hope, right? Like there's always the survivor. And it's also kind of like why I don't like Ash versus Evil Dead as much, because I like the serious Evil Dead. I like the dark, gritty, no hope, Lovecraftian cosmic nightmare that is the first movie. It is cool seeing the boomstick and the chainsaw, or like, Mia like face fucking the abomination. But like at the end of the day, like I kind of want to see what would happen if the book won and, a little bit of chaos spreads out beyond the cabin and causes more fucked up shit. So, I was really hoping that this whole family in Evil Dead Rise was going to get disposed of over the course of the movie. And, what happens is we get this whole, long-winded dynamic about why all these people just suck. So, the mom tells the kids to go get pizza. So one of the kids, who I swear to God, he looks like he's 11, but he drives the fucking car, little Slim Shady, and they go get the pizzas. And, when they come back, then an earthquake happens, and it causes this derelict apartment to kind of like, split, and then they go underground and find, well, little Slim Shady goes underground and he finds this old bank vault from the 20s. He rifles through some shit, and then he finds some old phonograph records and the Book of the Dead, of course. So he brings it back upstairs and he puts the fucking records on his turntables after looking through the book, And I have to say, not my favorite Necronomicon rendition in this, movie. I personally like the one in Evil Dead more, with the fucking patchwork skin design. I thought that was really cool. This one, though, the thing that it had, the illustrations are always badass on the inside of the book. But in terms of the outside, I remember the covers just seemed really bland. But they had this cool feature by the pages where it had almost like teeth, kind of like that book in the third Harry Potter movie. So I thought that was cool. It was like a fucking bug made out of flesh and teeth and shit. It was nasty on the sides, but the covers weren't that cool. But anyway, Little Slim Shady starts spinning the record and the phonograph plays, and it's basically this priest who's, located the Necronomicon, and he's trying to convince people to get approval from the church to translate it, kind of like the audio tapes from the original Evil Dead movies. And you can actually even hear Bruce Campbell as one of the people screaming to burn the book, and the director's gone so far as to say that that's actually supposed to be a time-displaced Ash warning people about the book. So, multiple timelines. This gets brought up in the movies and in the comic books. Pretty cool little Easter egg there. And I believe Bruce Campbell was an executive producer on this, so that's pretty cool as well. And while the record starts spinning, basically shit starts kicking off in the old school Evil Dead fashion. I also forgot to mention that in the time frame of the family bickering and fighting, there's, a few neighbors introduced who we obviously expect are going to get fucked up later on. But, so once the record starts spinning, everyone in this building, or at least on this floor, is not going to have a good time. And what ensues is just fucking carnage. The mom is the first one to get possessed, and I can't remember who played her. I'm going to look at this right now. Alyssa Sutherland. She fucking killed it. Like, she made this movie. If you've seen the trailer, you know what I'm talking about. She's the main Deadite shown in it. She hit it out of the park. Absolutely terrifying. And honestly, the vibe this movie gave off at points is kind of like Resident Evil 7, in the sense that it was in one fixed location. And, something that happens, a little spoiler alert, family members start turning into abominations as the night progresses, and it's pretty crazy. Another cool thing that I, really liked about the setting of this movie was it takes place in an apartment building, and, I mentioned it earlier, Demons, more specifically Demons 2, by Lamberto Bava, is a similar Evil Dead type movie about demon creatures, from an unholy relic coming out to fuck people up. Super gory, super good time. I highly recommend you check out both of them. But Demons 2 also takes place in a high rise, and shit goes out of hand. So I thought that was a cool, maybe like parallel or nod to it. Not saying they should remake Demons, please don't remake it. But cool callback, and at least what I thought was a callback. And we get carnage, man. We get like people self-mutilating in the old Evil Dead fashion, scissors going in faces, and basically I was waiting for the family to start getting chopped off one by one. Essentially the mom gets locked out in the hallway, and she butchers fucking everybody like quick. And there's a cool reference to Evil Dead 2 with an eyeball flying out into somebody's mouth. But, like I said, this one plays more into the serious angle. So if you haven't seen Evil Dead 2 and you've only seen the first one, or this is your first Evil Dead, and you're like, I guess, uneasy by this kind of horror movie, or this doesn't make you laugh, then this might not be funny. This might actually be genuinely creepy to you. And I was thinking about it in the way that they did this scene almost shot for shot, but it wasn't played for laughs. And there's a couple other references from Evil Dead 1 and 2, more specifically 2, and they weren't funny like in Evil Dead 2, which was great. It was creepy, it was unsettling, and it was a cool way to call back to the classic movies. So, aside from some really shitty family member characters, there was a lot of cool stuff in this movie. And kind of like with something like House of a Thousand Corpses, Evil Dead is something where you're not really focusing on the main characters. Well, at least with the first Evil Dead, and to a lesser extent Evil Dead 4, because you just want to see chaos from the Deadites. And this delivers. The family members start getting possessed one by one. The first one to go is Ellen Page, and she slowly transitions into Elliot Page, this fucking bug-infested, glass-eating fucking creature that gets staked, and it just keeps coming back like you'd expect, and it's just such a bloodbath. And then little Slim Shady gets turned, and then shit gets really close. There's this great scene where Beth, because she basically becomes the surrogate mom to the little Chloe Grace Moretz clone, right? Like she's her mission is to get this one out along with the baby in her belly, and she's like having these bicker moments with the sister because like Exorcist demons or Evil Dead demons, it's taunting her and shit. A lot of really close calls and corridor chases, really cool shit. I was having a good time watching it. I thought it was pretty epic seeing everyone go, and I was really thinking, this movie's it's gonna kill everyone by the end. Where it started to lose me was in the final act, where they go in the basement under the building where the little girl and her aunt escaped. The abomination is now amalgamated, all the bodies. There's this great callback scene too where all the dead bodies before they get in the elevator are looking up and they keep screaming, "Dead by dawn, you'll be dead by dawn," which was really cool because instead of it being two demon Shemp creatures screaming in a cackling voice, it was like this bloody, gory mess on the floor, and everyone was saying it in synchronicity. It was just so wild. But then once they get to the sub basement, it kind of turned into the Evil Dead 4 ending, where this amalgamation abomination was chasing them down. There's a giant grinder thing in the fucking apartment basement, and the abomination gets fucked up with a chainsaw, literally almost the same way as the abomination. Spoiler alert, but it was literally the Evil Dead 4 ending. I mean, that's the best way to put it, and that kind of threw me off. They get away, and then it kind of wraps around and shows how the people from the cabin got infected, because this, I forgot to mention, takes place a day before the fact. And I didn't really like the ending for that. I thought they kind of cheaped out on it. I feel like they could have achieved the same ending with the the new chick getting possessed, but they could have killed everybody off in that giant grinder. I don't know why they decided to spare them and leave the door open for new heroes. I know it sounds kind of weak and stupid to want more Ash Williams in the movies, because I know he's showing up in the shows, but I want to see Evil Dead movies at least. And I don't know if I'm the only one here, but I want to see self-contained kind of Evil Dead movies if they keep putting these out, and I want to see how far the infection of the Necronomicon can go. Who knows, maybe if they do go a route of making this a bigger series, not an expanded universe, don't worry, but if they go and make this a bigger series, who knows, maybe it could be like a zombie infection where by the third movie it's most of the world is deadites and the surviving humans gotta band together or they don't stand a chance, and by the end of the series everyone gets fucking destroyed, and then a big reveal, it's one of the many Earths where Ash is trying to stop the Necronomicon, and that's where the show I don't know, I don't really like the idea of having characters established or created to maybe show up in a sequel, and this movie kind of felt like it ended there was a sequel in mind. And I don't know, I just feel like if it was a self-contained, if they made it in the intention as a one-off and they killed everybody and that was it, I feel like that would be cool. And then, the next movie could be completely different or in a different time period in the past or something. But I don't know. I just didn't really like the ending. There's something about these new horror movies, like a lot of the ones I've been seeing recently, like they'll be really good, and then the last 10 minutes will just fucking ruin it. But in this case, with Evil Dead Rise, I don't want to say the last 10 minutes ruined it because I still really enjoyed this movie. I thought the gore was great. Fucking Alyssa Sutherland's character, Elle, was, like I said, the high point of this movie. She was fucking creepy. One of the creepiest Deadites I've ever seen in any form, whether it be video game, comic, or movie. A lot of elements kind of, threw back to the first movie, which I fucking loved because the first Evil Dead movie is like a serious, like I said, grim nightmare, and this felt like that, for whatever annoying characters that were there or pointless, useless characters, they got dispatched really fast and in really grotesque ways, so that was somewhat satisfying to see, and it was cool to see, like, practical effects show up, although I will say the practical effects, I kind of feel were a step down from Evil Dead 4 or just Evil Dead the remake. I feel like that movie really set the bar high for gore in this series, and this one just really didn't match it. Again, it could be a budgetary thing, but I don't really know. But still, good movie. I fucking enjoyed it. I feel like if you guys were fans of Evil Dead, whether it's the first movie, the second movie, the third movie, well, I don't know. The third movie is really different, but I'm just going to say, yeah, if you're a fan of all these movies, I feel like you're going to like this. It's not like, Friday the 13th or fucking Halloween or anything like that where there's like already 10 plus movies and it feels like it's worn out its welcome. There's only 5 at this point, and it's a franchise where the comic stories are really good. The show, from what I watched, was pretty decent. There's like expanded media to it that just makes its world so interesting, kind of like Alien or Hellraiser. Like the comics and stuff just make that lore so much more interesting, and Evil Dead has so much potential, and I'm glad this came out. I'm glad it's still on the minds of studios to make these movies because Evil Dead fucking kicks ass. Like I said, hopefully one day I'll cover the whole series. Maybe I'll cover the first one, maybe I'll do them all in one, who knows. But love Evil Dead, want to cover the originals at some point. As for Evil Dead Rise, I'm going to rate this an 8. I'm going to give this a solid 8. The 2 points I'm going to knock off, it sounds a little stingy, the ending and the gore. If it went with the 100% bleak, like dreaded ending where everybody dies and the last girl gets infected and it loops to the beginning where everyone dies, I would have been happy with it. It would have been grim as fuck, and I think it would have been ballsy to do, especially because in Evil Dead 4 they were gonna do it, and then they made Mia a new type of Ash, which I always thought was kind of dumb, and the gore wasn't that good. At times it was kind of like, just shit, but there was some really brutal stuff that went on, and in some respects I felt like they kind of held back or they teased at things. Like there's a pretty cool thing with a tattoo gun, and all we really see with it is it causes a gash on a cheek. Yeah, other than that, this movie was an 8. This was an entertaining movie. Aside from what I just said, I didn't think there was really any problem with it, and I would be down to see more Evil Dead movies. And if you are an Evil Dead fan, I highly recommend you check this out. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Stay tuned for more. Peace.